a statement on Monday, Mr. Thrush said, "I apologize to any woman who felt uncomfortable in my presence, and for any situation where I behaved inappropriately. Any behavior that makes a woman feel disrespected or uncomfortable is unacceptable." Quote, Mr. Thrush's byline has been among the most recognizable this year at the Times, where he was one of 6 reporters covering the White House full-time. In addition, Random House recently announced that it would publish a book about President Trump by Mr. Thrush and Maggie Haberman, another White House reporter for the Times and a former colleague of Mr. Thrush's at Politico. In a statement on Monday, Random House said, "This matter recently came to our attention and we are looking at it closely and seriously." Quote, Mr. Thrush, 50, became so well known that he was portrayed several times on Saturday Night Live as a foil to Sean Spicer, the former White House press secretary. Bobby Moynihan, a cast member on the show for 9 seasons, portrayed Mr. Thrush, while Mr. Spicer was played by the film and television star Melissa McCarthy. Before joining the Times, Mr. Thrush was the chief political correspondent at Politico and a senior staff writer for Politico magazine. He has also worked at Newsday. In the article, Ms. McGann, Vox's editorial director, said that Mr. Thrush had put his hand on her thigh and started to kiss her at a bar near Politico's headquarters. 5 years ago, she was a Politico editor at the time, and Mr. Thrush was a reporter. The next day, she wrote, she saw him talking to male colleagues. Later, she reported that she felt some men in the Politico office began to look at her differently than they had before. In his statement, Mr. Thrush said his recollection differed from Ms. McGann's. "The encounter was consensual, brief and ended by me," he said. "She was an editor above me at the time and I did not disparage her to colleagues at Politico as she claims." Quote, another woman interviewed by Vox described an interaction with Mr. Thrush that occurred in June, when he attended a going-away party for one of his former Politico colleagues. The woman,